You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Brie and Thais, episode 58.
Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Brie Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
a movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
Because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
Good morning, Amplifiers. Brie Seeley here, and today we have a very different format for the podcast. So this will be the first podcast where Thais is actually not joining me as an interviewer. So I'm going to be doing a solo interview, and the guest I have for you today is unfucking believable. She is like one of the best humans in the world that I think I've ever met. And I'm not just saying that, I actually mean that. And so let me introduce you to today's guest. Do you like this so far?
Oh my God, I'm like dying. I'm dying over here trying to be quiet. This is amazing.
So, Amplifiers, I want you to meet Miss Thais Sky, my guest on Be Amplified for the day.
Hey.
So for those of you that don't know, Thais is 2 parts sass and 1 part straight up truth talk.
I think people at this point do know that. But anyway, keep going.
She is a motivational speaker, author, women's leadership coach, and women's rights advocate on a heart-led mission to support the seekers, the visionaries, and the why the heck do I feel so stuck of the world reclaim their worthiness by learning how to explore, trust, and express themselves unapologetically. Based on her own healing journey and decades of research and mentoring women worldwide, she's developed a comprehensive model that explores and offers tools and skills to help heal the pervasive sense of unworthiness within women, what she calls the worthiness wound. She received a prestigious first-class degree in management and has studied spiritual psychology, yoga, and leadership for over 10 years. Washington Magazine named her as one of the top 8 bloggers to know. The Huffington Post calls her an inspirational woman. Really? That happened?
That did. Can you imagine that?
And she was nominated for Forbes Magazine 30 Under 30 Award. You can learn more about her and her online offerings at iamthaissky.com. Welcome, Miss Thais Sky. Welcome to the Be Amplified podcast.
Is this how our guests feel when we read their bios? I'm like, wow, that sounds really impressive.
Probably.
I'm an impressive human being. So filled with accolades and accomplishments.
I mean, if you can't celebrate them here, where the fuck can you celebrate them, right?
I mean, fact.
Yeah.
Fact.
Well, Thais, you may or may not know that we always begin our podcast with the same question to each one of our guests. So I will ask you that same question now. And actually, monumentous moment, I think this is the first time I've ever asked this question.
Yeah, usually I'm the one that asks it.
Because I read the bio and you ask the question. That's our relationship. So now I get to not only ask it for the first time, Thais gets to answer it for the first time.
And maybe when I do you, I will read the bio and not mess up. So,
well, there's that. I do pretty good on our bios for the most part.
For the most part. Some people's bios I have to edit.
Exactly. All right, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
So, Miss Thais Sky, what does it look like for you to live an amplified life?
You know, I didn't prep for this. And in retrospect, I can see how this is actually a really hard question to answer without any sort of preparation. What does it look like for me to live an amplified life? I think what that looks like for me is to feel really at home within yourself, to know who you are, to know your limitations, to be able to honor those limitations, and really be able to express and be your true selves unapologetically, without the self-hate and the nagging and the inner criticism and the constant barrage of self-deprecation that I feel most of us are constantly navigating through. And I feel like when we can get to that place, when we can know who we are and we can express that and we can be that, I think that's when we have the true potential to then go out and be the visionaries and the leaders and the world changers in a really deeply impactful level.
So this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. You mentioned, not having the voices and the inner self-talk and stuff that kind of keeps us down. Do you think it's possible to 100% eradicate that voice in our
No.
humanity? Or is it
Mm-mm.
just, so how do you navigate that voice and being in the space of being empowered and all that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely don't think I mean, there are beings who I believe have eradicated those voices. Buddha and Jesus Christ are two prime examples. And I feel like that is ultimately reaching another vision of the world, is when we are at that place.
Do you think Jesus had no doubts?
No, he had doubts. He had doubts, and he said it even on the cross. And that's why the story of Jesus Christ is so inspiring, right? Even on the cross, as he was dying, he has a moment of doubt, and he says, "Why, God, have you forsaken me?" And I love that humanity about him, and that's what's so beautiful about him, is that he is human. He is not some demigod or super god living on the human existence. He is human, but the very kind of next sentence is, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." And so he was able to then quickly remember who he truly is and who he truly was. And that's what I'm saying. So I do think that they have reached a point where they don't take the doubt as who they are, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I don't know if it's ever possible to fully eradicate that voice, because that's how our mind is wired. That's how our humanness comes through. But we can come to a place of deep remembering. So I love this story. There's a story. So I love Hanuman. He is a monkey god in the Hindu tradition, and he's the story is really inspiring to me. He was helping the prince Rama find Rama's kidnapped wife Sita. So Sita was kidnapped, and Hanuman was working with a clan of monkeys to help Rama find the princess. And Rama went in one direction and Hanuman went to another, and they went to the edge of India, where if they could, just a few hundred miles is Sri Lanka. And an eagle comes by. He goes, "Oh yeah, like I saw the demon king, like he stole Sita, like they're on Sri Lanka." And all the monkeys are like, "Okay, what are we gonna do to get her?" And one monkey was like, "I'm gonna leap 50 yards," and another monkey's like, "I'm gonna leap 100 yards." And some of the monkeys looked at Hanuman, being like, "Hanuman, like you can make this leap. You're a god. Like you can make this leap." And Hanuman's like, "I can't leap to Sri Lanka. Are you crazy? Like, I can't do that. I'm just a monkey." And the eagle comes to Hanuman and says, "Hanuman, you are a god. And let me remind you that you are a god." And so the eagle shares all these stories of what Hanuman has done in his life, how he was able to lick the sun like a lollipop, or, he's able to do all these things. And as he was telling these stories, Hanuman grew in size and grew in confidence, and he was able to leap to Sri Lanka and find Sita, and then they engaged in a whole battle. Anyway, so what I love about that story is that Hanuman represents all of us, where we always are in a state of forgetfulness, where we've forgotten who we really are. And when we can remember who we are, we can do anything. Anything is possible. And so my goal in my life is to clean the mirror, or clean the glass that is my heart, that is constantly thinking that I am these doubts, I am these human problems, it's all about me and my problems and my concerns. Cleaning the glass that reminds me that I'm actually so beyond that. And I think when we can reach that point on a more consistent basis, we can navigate our challenges with deeper awareness, deeper grace. We can hurt people less. We're kinder and nicer to people. And we make life less about us and our preoccupations, and more about how we can serve the world and serve humanity in a greater way.
Beautiful.
I do what I can sometimes, I think.
So we all still have doubts.
Yes, and doubts are normal. Doubt is an indication that there's something here, there's something big. Fear is normal. Bullshit, quote unquote. I hate when people say bullshit limiting beliefs. They're not bullshit. They're very real. They're here for a very specific reason, very specific purpose. One of the underlying premise in everything I do in my work is that everything we say and do has a positive intention. Every thought that we have, every fear comes from a positive intention to keep us safe or to keep us protected, or whatever the intention may be. I don't believe that human nature is malicious. Yes, we have malicious acts, but usually that maliciousness comes out of a deep defensiveness. And that defensiveness is created out of a deep fear and a deep need to feel protected. So if we can shift our approach to self-help and shift our approach to bettering ourselves, instead of from the perspective of I'm broken and I have all these bullshit limiting beliefs, and that's the reason why I don't get everything I want. I just have to push through these bullshit beliefs, and then I'll have all the money in the world. What if we could instead ask ourselves, well, why do I have these beliefs? Like, what's here? What's underlying this? What's the anxiety? What's the need to be safe? Can I protect myself? Can I help, can I see myself and develop the type of self-awareness and understanding of my psychology that I can be gentle with myself in this process? Can I honor that this is my limitation right now? Can I do the inner work of knowing where this is coming from and how we can begin to address this? And when we can take that kindness inward, I find that the whole process of developing ourselves actually becomes a really pleasant experience rather than another tool of self-hate and self-annihilation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have talked about this.
We have? I'm a first time guest. When have we talked about this? I don't
understand.
Conversations.
The whole idea of just like eradicating a limiting belief is basically, I love my analogies. It's like weeds, right? So you go out to the garden and it would basically just be like cutting off all the weeds at the surface. Like, just get rid of the limiting belief, but if you're not doing that underwork, like Thais just mentioned, and really healing the root of it, they're just going to grow back. You have to go underground. You have to dig up what you can't see and really work to heal that and ask, what it's there serving you for, and move past that stuff. So it's not just regrowing all these weeds back in your garden again.
Yeah. And that's been what I've been studying. I study shame and guilt. I've been studying, childhood psychology and attachment theory. I've been studying so much of wanting to get to the root of somatic experiencing is another thing that I've been studying a lot. Like, how do we get to the root of the quote unquote bullshit limiting belief so that it can change without us consciously trying to change it? Because here's what I'm noticing, what I'm seeing. While it's very easy to say that everything you want is just a decision away. Like, if you're not making money, that's a decision that you're making, and you just have to change that decision. So that while that's true, oftentimes our decisions are deeply unconscious, and the majority of our lives are actually deeply unconscious. Something like 80% of our lives is run through our unconscious mind and through not really being autonomous. So we really grossly overestimate how much autonomy we have in our lives. So I'm deeply curious, okay, if that's the case, and if we are quote unquote making these choices, when did we make that choice? When was it a conscious choice? Where within us are we continually choosing things that are hurting ourselves? Like, why do we get into these addicting patterns? Why do we get into addictions? Why do we hurt and self-sabotage ourselves? And I've been so fascinated by this because based on my own experience with binge eating, my binge eating stemmed from a deep belief that I didn't belong on this planet, that I am unlovable, that I am deeply undeserving, unworthy, right? And so yes, while my binge eating, I guess you could say, is a decision, it's extremely simplistic to say, well, then you just gotta decide not to binge eat. Because your mind is binge eating for a reason, and it has nothing to do with the food, and it has everything to do with something underneath that. And so that's what I've been so deeply obsessed with, is what is that underneath? What is that layer? And when we can get to that layer, I'm finding in my work and in my work with my clients, so my self-work and beyond, we actually change without forcing ourselves to change. Right? It's kind of like we start, let's say, just for simplistic reasons, we start to meditate without saying we should be meditating. We just naturally do it. So my binge eating kind of just started dissipating on its own as I did the inner work. I didn't have to consciously, be like, I'm going to stop binge eating today. I'm not going to binge eat. I'm going to not binge eat. And, putting that in my mind over and over and over again. And so, I've gotten to the place now where I don't binge eat and I don't calorie count. And I never thought I would get to this place. Never. And it was not a conscious, it was a, do you know what I'm saying? It's like, yes, it was a conscious decision to do the inner work, to heal the binge eating, but it was not a conscious decision. Like, today I'm not going to calorie count. And then that ended up being the case.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing a lot of work in.
And I think what's important to note too, like specifically in the example, is that you didn't heal your binge eating.
Right.
You healed what was causing your binge eating. Because if we go out and say, I'm going to heal this habit or this pattern, that pattern is going to represent itself in a different area of your life. It's just going to look differently. And then all the same habits and triggers and drugs in your brain and beliefs and all the things are going to continue to be perpetuated. It's just going to look different
because you're not addressing the reason why you're binge eating. If we treat binge eating as the enemy, then of course we just want to attack the enemy and make it go away. But instead, if we were to get curious in whatever anxieties are coming up for you, what's underlying this? What's underneath this? And can I approach this from the perspective of, this is here to help me? How is it actually stopping me from, how is it actually not helping me? But it thinks it's helping you. Something that I've been really, it's something I've been asking all of my clients, and it's actually a really fun question to ask yourself, those of you who are listening, is when, obviously those of you who are listening, who else would be even listening? Anyway.
I mean, I'll ask myself the question when I find out what it is. How's that?
Is when you start to notice your inner critic getting really loud, and when you can really notice your inner critic, is to ask it, how old do you think I am? And what we'll find is that the inner critic tends to think that we're in the single digits, that we're anywhere between the ages of 3 to 9 is where the inner critic believes that we are. And come on, that's like mind blowing. Like, when I learned that and I started to ask myself that, I was like, oh my geez, like my inner critic really thinks it has a job to do. It's protecting a 7-year-old from a very harsh world. And so it's going to berate ourselves and it's going to be mean to ourselves in order to protect our little kid, our little 7-year-old. But I'm not 7 years old. I'm 28 years old. And as a 28-year-old, I can actually navigate life through some relative confidence, except when it comes to calling insurance companies. No confidence there. But for the most part, I don't need this inner critic that's berating me as a 7-year-old because I'm 28 years old. So it's really cool to realize this, because then it gives yourself some perspective. And then you start to being able to be kind to the inner critic. And in return, it starts to dissipate. Just something really cool to play with.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit. I know you're going to love this question, because right before we got on here, Thais and I were talking about sentimentality and how she didn't realize how sentimental she was. So we just hit our 2-year anniversary of Amplify.
Yes.
And we've been doing the podcast for about 1.5 years. And I want to know, what has been your biggest learning experience through the last 2 years? Or the biggest gift in the last 2 years that Amplify's brought you?
Yeah, when we started Amplify, we were making $200 a month. And we split it 50-50.
So we were each making $100 a month?
$100. We're like, well, that's not sustainable.
For like the first 6 months, we were each making $100 a month.
That's not sustainable. I would say the greatest lesson that I continue to learn, and that Amplify has really accentuated for me, is that you'll never get to the 2-year mark if you don't start at the 0-year mark. Like the confidence and ease that Brie and I have in podcasting, the confidence and ease we now have at running events. We kind of fly by the seat of our pants in many ways, but we kind of just trust that we're going to figure it out. The shit's going to come together. The confidence that we have in putting ourselves out there and feeling really good about the Amplify brand. We love our logo. We love our website. It all started because we were willing to start at nothing, and to start at uncomfortable conversations. I don't think I want to listen to our first few episodes, but I'm sure that people that do can tell a huge difference between when we started and now. And we wouldn't be able to be here. That's what I'm saying. We wouldn't be able to be here if we didn't start then. But we all of us want to already be here. when we start. We already want to be making the $10 million at the get-go. We want to have the beautiful website and beautiful logo at the beginning. And we didn't start that way. Our logo was, Brie made it. It was cute. It was light
On
pink.
Canva.
On Canva. And that's where we needed to be.
And we didn't even have a website for the first
we had $200 a month. Like, we couldn't make a website.
I think the first 6 months we didn't have a website. We got it in March.
Yeah, we didn't have a website. And then we made it. We made our own first website.
Yeah, and for over the first year, we had that website that we didn't even invest in a good website or a designer until after, I think it was like a year and 4 months.
Yeah.
5 months.
And so start now. Start now. For the love of God, start now. Whatever it is, start now, start small, do something. You will gain the confidence eventually to be where you want to be. It's so interesting. People say, I'm so ready to speak on a stage with 10,000 people. Like, I'm so ready. But they've never spoken on a stage in front of 100 people. And you don't really realize the intensity of speaking on a stage with 10,000 people until you speak on a stage with 100 people and realize how quite not ready you are. So if you feel like you're ready to speak on a stage in front of 10,000 people, you're ready to have the love of your life, you're ready to make $1 bajillion, and right now you don't have any of those things, see if you can start small, start somewhere, and you're going to start to develop the skills necessary for you to speak in front of a stage of 10,000 people. So that's one of the biggest things I think I've taken away from the past 2 years. But I am extremely sentimental, and not in everything, but I find myself just not constant. What is it? Like maybe 15% of my time. 15% of my time.
Occasionally.
There you go. When I'm driving, especially thinking back on like my past lives. I've lived so many iterations of lives. My life in New Jersey, my life in Maryland, my life in Boston, my life in London, my life in Brazil, my life in Japan, my 3 different iterations of my life in Maryland, my life in LA. So I don't know what it is about my psychology. I just love going back. I find a lot of comfort and also discomfort in my sentimentality.
Now, is this sentimentality frequent, or has it just been recently?
No, it's always been the case.
Consistent?
Yeah. I've moved around a lot. So I feel like I built this as a way of remembering the things that I've left behind. When I was little, my mom didn't have any money. There were times when she's told me now that she's had to decide between feeding me and feeding herself, not having money for the bus and having to walk, I'm very, very, very poor. And so we didn't really have a lot of stuff. And I didn't really have a lot of toys. And as we moved so much, we got rid of a lot of stuff. So I don't really have a lot of stuff from my childhood. So I feel like I've developed this idea of being sentimental as a way of like nurturing past memories that I don't have any other way of accessing. But I could be making that up. So I don't know.
Interesting.
Could be.
I was just thinking, like, if it was something that was just coming up now for some reason, that maybe there was something on its way that was requiring you to be sentimental, or who knows. But
no, yeah, I don't know.
Just an always thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, Miss Thais Sky, if you were on the other side of this interview and you were interviewing yourself, what question would you wish that I would be asking you?
Oh, Brie, that is such a cop-out.
I know.
You are hilarious.
Such a good cop-out and such a hard question to answer. So here's the conundrum that I had this morning. I was in meditation and I had like a few of these questions pop up for you and things I really wanted to highlight about your interview. And then I had this moment where I was like, fuck, I can't be too mean to Thais because she's interviewing me in a few weeks. And if I really put her feet to the flames, she's
Karma's a bitch.
Over.
Karma is a bitch. Okay, let's talk about shame. Let's talk about shame because I'm doing a psychology course right now on it, and I'm learning a lot of really useful information. So, and this is something we haven't talked about on our podcast, and so let's talk about it. There, see, is this what you wanted, Brie? Is this what you wanted?
Sure, although that's not a question. But here, Thais, I hear you're taking a course. Would you educate myself and the listeners just a little bit more on the intricacies of shame?
Shame. Yeah. Okay. So fun fact number one, shame
That
is
was so good.
yeah, no, that was beautiful. Shame is an emotion. It's an actual emotion, and people don't often know that because it feels different than I would say typical emotions feel. Because when an emotion like kind of feels like that is out like sadness, you just feel an overwhelming amount of grief. That feels like that's the emotion. Shame feels like it's kind of covering up so much other stuff, and it is. The emotion of shame is an emotion that's actually covering an incredible amount of other stuff underneath. So let's going back to my binge eating. When I binge ate afterwards, I felt an immense amount of shame and the sense of being uncontrollable and whatever. And the more I did, the more I did deeper work, the more I realized that shame was like a condom. It was like preventing me from really feeling deeper, squirty emotions. Is that ill? That too much? Is that gross?
You took that over
Did
the
I?
line.
Yeah, I think I did. But it's a shield that blocks you from kind of getting intimate with all the other stuff that's going on there. But instead of like forcing yourself to move through shame, just like you shouldn't force yourself to move through anger just because sadness is underneath. Anger is its own emotion that needs to be honored. And shame is its own emotion that needs to be honored. And shame is actually a very biological tool that we've inherited for thousands of years to keep us from towing out of line that would push us out of the community, out of the tribe, out of the communal living situation we had going on back then. So, shame would prevent you from killing somebody else so that you weren't going to be exiled, because if you're exiled, you were probably going to die. So shame kind of stems from a very, very deep, unconscious place of helping you kind of stay in line. And then most of shame is actually developed societally. So there are different cultures that experience different types of shame. And so it's now become a cultural tool to keep people in line. So I thought that was really fascinating because we often think of shame as an individual issue, when rather shame is a collective tool. And different cultures have different ways of raising shame. Um, for example, right now we have fat phobia is a real thing in our society, and yet the average woman's size is a size 14. So there are an incredible number of women in our society, in our Western society, almost the majority, that are not quote unquote skinny, right? And so there's this huge shame being placed on women about their weight size. And the shame comes a lot from inside the family, as opposed to, let's say, racism, where it's societal, but you can find respite in your family, right? You find a sense of commonality of the color of your skin within your family. So at least you have a family unit that protects you. But with fat phobia, the shame is often also in the family. We can all, I'm sure, remember a time when our mom may have made an offhand comment about our weight, or we've made an offhand comment to our mothers about their weight. And so when we notice that, okay, so fat phobia is actually a cultural shaming device, for a multitude of reasons, mostly for beauty standards that women are supposed to be aligning to in order for them to be loved by society, we can start to recognize it's actually not our shame to carry. It's not our debt. It's not something that we have to be taking on as our own. There's a lot of shame in the entrepreneurial space, in the coaching industry, of if you don't make this type of money, or if you don't have this type of launch, then you're not a good entrepreneur. Then it means all these things about you. And so when you notice that shame has come up, it's a great place for you to take a pause and ask yourself, is it really true that who I am, if I express it, were to get me kicked out of the community? Is it really true? Sometimes it is true. Bree and I have in the Amplified Woman, a beautiful individual who has shared that, she has some challenges with money that may get in the way of her relationship. So that is true, that shame that she has around money, it actually could kick her out of that community. But then there's the type of shame where it's actually a complete illusion. Like your fatness or skinniness will literally not kick you out of society, will not kick you out of your job. So it's really important with shame that first filter you move through as you're thinking about shame, or I feel really shamed, is it really true? And then whether or not it is true will determine how you respond and how you act and how you then heal that shame.
Well, and it sounds like too a little bit of like, is this my shame or
Mm-hmm.
is this not mine? Like if it's being placed on you from society, that's a whole different experience than if it's yours, and if you, then you need to own that and take responsibility for it to heal it
Yeah.
through it. So,
And it causes a lot of anxiety. It's like we have this threshold of where we are, which is down here, because you guys don't see me on video. So you're down here, and then where you're supposed to be is all the way up here, and there's a huge gap within that. And the where you're supposed to be is based on a lot of things. It's based on society. It's based on self expectation. It's a lot of it is based on childhood psychology, which I'm not going to go into today. But that gap is what the inner critic is trying to absolve. That gap is what we are so desperate to push ourselves beyond our norm, like beyond what feels good for us. And so oftentimes, there's the positive push of self-development, which is get uncomfortable, get uncomfortable. And that's to help close that gap of where you are and what you want. But then there's the shadow side of that, which is it only feeds the inner critic, which then only feeds the shame of you not having what you think you should have based on your age, based on your looks, based on your hustle, based on, society. And so we really want to be careful when we're talking about that gap and when we're talking about getting people to where they want to be, that we're not doing it from the shadow side of pushing people to create stronger shame and stronger inner critic. Because if there's shame and if that inner critic is loud, you can bet that you're not gonna be positively motivated to go after what you want, and it's going to be a deeply triggering and trance-like experience for people. And as coaches and healers and teachers, the last thing we want to be doing is promoting anxiety within our clients and shaming them towards bold actions that they're not quite ready to take, because first we really have to set a strong foundation of where they are.
awesome. Yeah, I did hear a story recently, a friend who was working with a coach, and how basically every time they got on the call, the coach would just like yell and tell this person like what a piece of shit they were and how they weren't doing enough and how they needed to be doing more, and that their strategy wasn't good, and just all this stuff. And it's heartbreaking to hear that that's how things are being manipulated in the coaching
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah. And look at, shame within men. um the shame to not express emotions, the shame to not be able, like, to not care too much about their family, right? There's a joke about the bros, and then the one guy's married and all the bros are like, dude, like, don't care about us anymore. That's shaming. Yeah. So when we shame men from being family people, or being connected to their emotions, it creates a toxic masculinity that upholds the patriarchal mindset that men have to be a certain way in order for them to benefit from our system. When we talk about patriarchy, we're not saying that all men are bad. Patriarchy doesn't serve men either. It really only serves a very, very, very small number of individuals. So we want to be looking at making sure that we're not using shame and shaming as a tool in any way, men, women, coaching, industry, whatever, in taking action. Because it just ultimately isn't going to work. Now, there is a positive role of shame. And I've been really thinking about what differentiates from the negative role of shame, which is what we just talked about, what the positive role of shame. The positive role in shame is in indigenous cultures, they used the tool of shame to keep their kids, their teens, and people who made mistakes in line. But the way they did it was very collective based. So like they shamed you by creating a whole ceremony around you and dancing with you and reminding you of your collective, of your goodness and your collective responsibility, and embarrassing you and leveraging the tool of shame. But it was very much a community love shame, if that makes sense, where you were being seen, you were being witnessed, you were being told that's not okay, but we believe in you and we're going to support you into the behavior that is okay. Versus the shame that we use now of like the criminal justice system, where we just lock people up and treat them as criminals for petty crimes, right? We treat them guilty before proven innocent, and we just lock them up and we don't look at them. We don't even, we just put them away, and they don't have any tools, any way of improving themselves, of repenting, of atoning. There's no chance for that. They're just stuck in a system, and that's it. So shaming, when it's done with a positive intention, when it's done to bring the collective or the individual into the collective best interest, can actually be a really powerful tool. But we've forgotten this tool. And so we leverage shame in bad ways. And we leverage shame, to get clients. And we leverage shame to, remind women that they're ugly. And so you need to buy all these beauty products in order to make women look pretty. And that's just not serving our society.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're close to being done. I have one more question for you.
Okay.
One more. Let's see. What are you most proud of from this year, 2017?
Jesus, Brie. These are the hard ass fucking questions. These are the type of questions I need major preparation for.
Oh, bullshit. There had to have been something that popped up. What was it? What are you most proud of from this year? Because I know it's been a hard year for both of us.
It has been a hard year for both of us. So we shared our challenges of this past year. I think it was two episodes ago. Yeah.
This is the problem. I can't ask you that question because we already answered it. So I'm asking you all these other questions.
No, I hear you. I understand. No. I'm going somewhere with this. So we talked about our challenges. I think it was 2 or 3 podcast episodes ago. And then last podcast episode, or the one before last with Kelly Deals, Bree and I talked about the coaching industry and I talked about reclaiming the word coach, and Kelly came on and talked about the female lifestyle empowerment brand. And Kelly's female lifestyle empowerment brand model is what was the catalyst to so much of the changes that I implemented in my business in the earlier this year. And then I've spent 5-6 months trying to figure out how I was going to market myself and put myself out there and promote my work and be very proud of the work that I'm doing in the world without leveraging social triggers and sleazy marketing. That is very rampant. It's not like sleazy marketing is only a few people. It's the underbelly beliefs of the coaching industry is a lot of sleazy stuff. And so I have to say what I'm most proud of is, the fact that I'm currently launching a group program, and I've made a full commitment to launch this program and show up in this program in a way that I would have never done before, and really taking a stand for the different types of beliefs that I am now stepping into, like the beliefs that people know how to make the best decisions for them, like the decision that, I don't have to hide my price point, like the decision that I don't have to coerce people to sign up. Like when people feel ready, they'll be ready. And so it's been a really exhilarating and challenging experience because I'm going against so much of what I thought I had to do in order to be quote unquote successful. But I'm really proud of that. And I'm really proud of the woman that I've become in the past 7 months. I mean, I'm deeply imperfect, but I'm able to stand in my power more and be very, very clear on certain boundaries with my relationship, with my partnership, with my parents, but also just much more compassionate. In the journey of awakening to my privilege and awakening to my role and responsibility in the realm of being a human, I've actually started to develop a deep, love for the human spirit and a deep love for humanity that I can't say I had before, which is ironic, right? Because we're coaches and we're supposed to love people because that's the work that we're in. But like an unconditional kind of love for the fucked upness that is humanity, that wasn't always me. But I'm starting to actually really see that and notice just how divine humans are. And that's exciting me because the more I'm falling in love with humans and being a humanitarian, um, the more I'm confident that my work will continue align with the being of deepest service to the world, which is ultimately what I want. And Brie, my North Node in astrology is Aquarius, and Aquarius is the sign of being a humanitarian. So I feel like I'm slowly. It's probably going to take another 50 years for me to get there. Stepping
Probably not.
into stepping into being away from the Leo, which is my South Node. So for you guys that are listening, astrology is really cool, right? So there's the North Node of the Moon and the South Node of the Moon, and the North Node of the Moon tells you your purpose in this lifetime. And your South Node of the Moon tells you your greatest challenge in fulfilling that purpose, which is the opposite sign of the astrological circle. And so the opposite sign for Aquarius is Leo, which is all about me and pride and being center stage, and being all about me, me, me. So I don't know. I guess, okay, here's what I'm trying to say. I'll wrap this up by saying this. I used to hate that my North Node, that my purpose was this idea of being a humanitarian and being for humans. I used to hate that because I was still very adamant on making it be all about me, me, me. And I'm starting to open up and really see how thrilling and exciting this purpose actually could be. And that comes up, I think, a lot with age and wisdom and whatever. But I'm starting to be open to have it not just be about me, 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 and doing the work to actually be of service to other people, and using my spiritual practice to guide me in becoming a kinder, nicer person to myself and then to definitely to other people. So yeah.
Awesome.
So that's what I say about myself.
It's been a difficult year, but a good one.
I don't know about the word good. That's a very big word to be using.
It's a very committed word.
It is a committed word. I would say it's been very enlightening. It's been very eye-opening. It's been very transformative.
That's
Which
so
is
funny.
ironic because my tarot card for the year was not death or tower like it's been for the past bajillion years. And yet I'd say this has been the most deathy, towery themed year.
Not necessarily. What was your tarot card for this year?
Actually, I think I have it right here. I write down it in my planner so I can access it at all times. Oh my gosh, did I not write it down? My word for the year is simplicity. I had forgotten this since I wrote it 7 months ago, so thank you for the reminder. I have to touch base and see if that's actually what I've been doing. No, I don't have it down here. So I think it was the Wheel of Fortune. I think is what it was. Brie and I love using the tarot to support our lives.
Yeah, it's fun and interesting. I'm pretty sure my card for this year is the Sun.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Will we have to talk more about this on my episode?
We may, because that's very counterintuitive.
When I was in Seattle, my friend and I looked it up and we're reading about it. Yeah, my because we looked at it, said the sun symbolizes daily renewal, light, and warmth.
Yeah, no, it's a great sign.
Yeah. Creative, multifaceted growth and development. What's the Wheel of Fortune?
The Wheel of Fortune is about changing tides. It's about nothing lasts. Everything changes. Everything turns.
See, I wonder though if you needed the Death and Tower cards moving into this year to then be at the place where, So I don't think this year is a Death or Tower card for you.
I mean, things are changing. I've changed more in the past 6 months than I think I've changed in the past 20, 30, 40 years. So And I'm not even 40 years old, and that's how much I've changed in the past 6 months. And my astrological signs is, according to my Vedic astrologer, a chart of transformation, and I will always be transforming, which sounds fucking exhausting, but I think I'm getting used to it by now. So it's like, here's the point, people. Here's the point. Change is inevitable. I was just talking about this last night at our dinner party to one of our lovely guests. We can never predict where we're going to be 5 years from now. I would have never predicted 2 years ago where Amplify would be today. I would have never predicted 5 years ago that I'd be living in Los Angeles with the person that I am, because I didn't even meet him yet. Like we just have no idea what is going to happen. And so what if we were to spend a little less time obsessing over creating this idealized 10-year vision, 30-year vision, and spend just a little more time in building the inner resources required so that when those changes happen, it's not so debilitating. It's not so crazy. It's not so, because there's space for both. We need both. We need the vision. We need our goals. Like, we love goals. We need to feel like a North Star to guide us on our journey. There's nothing wrong with that. And as a human race, I know that we're very future oriented, and I would just love for us to just dip our toes a little bit more into present orientation, and doing the inner work of developing the stuff required, the inner resilience, so that you can then, when you're stepping into that future, have a lot more power and grace, because death happens, getting a loss of job happens, getting disease happens, the death of a loved one. This stuff happens. We can't protect ourselves from it by obsessing over our goals. We can protect ourselves from it by being here with ourselves as often as we can.
Yeah.
And that is my final pedestal moment of the day.
There is absolutely a fine balance and a great way to look at the future and the present, because we all know that if you're unhappy in the present, that's really what's influencing and impacting what you're creating in the future. I was just at a thing this weekend, and he said, if you want to know why you are where you are today, look where you were 6 months ago.
Yep.
And that's what created exactly where you are today. And so it's important, yes, to future pace and have visions and goals. We know that that's what I'm driven and motivated by. But it also comes with a coupling of loving where you're at in the present moment, regardless of what it looks like and whether it is what you would have, quote unquote, chosen. And so awesome.
Yep.
Great perspective to end on. So
Yay.
One thing I wanted to be clear about is that I guess there's been some confusion. I've gotten reflections lately. So Thais and I both own our own brands. If you're listening to this and you don't know, Amplify isn't our main thing. So Thais and I, as Thais is talking about her programs and stuff, I encourage everyone on here to go check out her website and check out her work, because while we have Amplify and we do Amplify together, we both do our own things. And Thais is exceptionally brilliant at the work that she does in the world. And so, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you can go to her website, iamthaissky.com. That'll also all be in the show notes. And I happen to know that you also maybe have a particular affinity for the social media. So would you also tell people where they can find you all over the interwebs?
You can find me anywhere at I am Thais Sky, but I am mostly vocal right now on Facebook, but also on Instagram. I've been doing more Instagram stories lately, getting myself back into the Instagram life. Again, it's all at I am Thais Sky. And yes, Brie and I have our own separate brands. We have had our brands before we had Amplify. Amplify was a collective adventure of bringing events and podcasting, conversation, and all this stuff together, which has been incredibly exhilarating and fun, and brought its own set of challenges. But it's still mind-blowing that people kind of get confused.
My sister the other day.
Serious? Your sister?
Yeah. Yeah, she
Shame
asked
on
me
you,
something,
Michaela.
and
Shame
I was
on you.
wait, you don't know that Amplify's not my main source of income. That's not.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd put it out there. Thais
Well,
has a brilliant brand,
I do.
brilliant coaching business.
I really do, though.
And yeah. So we
Yes.
have our own things, and we have
Yes. So yeah, you can learn more about me on my website. And That's it.
One last parting brilliant thought. One simple sentence, short and concise, which I know is not your forte. Ready, go.
Hashtag be the change.
Oh my God.
I have it tattooed on my foot. It's the first thing that came into my head. Okay.
That's awesome.
Without the hashtag. I did not have a hashtag on my body.
Oh my God, you need to add that. Let's go. I'll meet you. There's one on Melrose right by Target.
Oh my
We'll be
God.
there
No.
soon.
No hashtags on my body.
It's not a hashtag, Thais. It's a pound sign. All right, amplifiers. Thank you for joining us for yet another epic Amplified.
Thank you for having me.
Oh
It
my
is
gosh.
a pleasure and honor.
You were the best guest ever.
I would say I'm probably one of the better ones. Yeah.
All right, amplifiers. You know you can find us at the Amplify Co. Go be the change. We love you and have an amplified week.